We have developed speed, but we have shut ourselves in. Machinery that gives abundance has left us in want. We think too much and feel too little. More than machinery, we need humanity.
We know the air is unfit to breathe, our food is unfit to eat, as if that's the way it's supposed to be. We know things are bad, worse than bad. They're crazy.
Silence! The great and powerful Oz knows why you have come.
You've got to say, I'm a human being. God damn it! My life has value. You have meddled with the primal forces of nature.
Don't give yourselves to brutes. Men who despise you, enslave you, who regiment your lives, tell you what to do, what to think, or what to feel, who drill you, diet you, treat you like cattle, use you as cannon fodder. Don't give yourselves to these unnatural men with machine minds and machine hearts.
With Jason Bermas.
And who loves you? And who do you love?
Hey everybody, Jason Bermas here, and I'm just asking questions like when Peter Thiel writes an op-ed in the Financial Times about truth and reconciliation and taking down the deep state, what deep state is he actually talking about? Because I've been aware of Thiel now for well over a decade, in large part introduced to him by Webster Tarpley, of which, by the way, I think Tarpley in a lot of issues has gone off the deep end ever since the Trump presidency. And I think it had a lot to do with Trump successfully suing him for some of the literature he put out there. I mean, you want to fast track TDS, that is probably the way to do it. Now, that does not make his criticisms of Thiel any less relevant. And those criticisms are reality sauce. You know, Peter Thiel has not only been a staple at the Bilderberg Group, we're talking, international, deep state, in my opinion, when you're talking about that group, for well over a decade. He's on the steering committee and has brought others in, such as Alex Karp. And when you're talking about globalism, when you're talking about military and intelligence alliances, you have to look at not only Palantir, which is the corporate level, but you also have to look at the alliances such as Five Eyes, right, with the United Kingdom, with Australia, with Canada, Israel, etc. Very important to look at those alliances because we do live in an interlocked world. So what we're going to do is, while we are critical of Thiel, we are going to read this op-ed because, look, in the past, I've done watch-alongs with both Karp and Thiel, where a lot of what they're saying sounds, dandy. Sounds good old skadoo-radoo, right? But we're not looking at the deeper stuff. We're not looking at the connections this guy has. I mean, you talk about PayPal and digital money. And, someone that was a pioneer in that. You talk about Facebook and social media, somebody that was a pioneer in that. So before we get there, I do want to remind everybody I could not do this without you. $5, $10, $15 absolutely means the world to me. We got the Buy Me a Coffee and other links down below. Also, please share this information. So let's kick it off. I found the story over on the Daily Mail, but we're going to read the actual Financial Times op-ed. And right away, when you're talking about Thiel, many people, even within quote-unquote MAGA, don't realize how influential He's not only been in the past administration, he was the technology advisor under Trump, but truly this administration, with the obvious connections to J.D. Vance, but also, you remember the podcast push of Trump, and we're going to get into that in a moment. You know, Peter Thiel was part of that podcast push, and remember, he had very, very provocative things to say about Jeffrey Epstein. That has been a huge thing with Trump's base. Let's not kid ourselves. So, you know, Peter Thiel talked about his conspiracy theory of Gates and Epstein and ex-wives, etc. I want to put it out there that we have to remember during that exchange, Joe Rogan mentioned Whitney Webb and her work and said that we need someone like Whitney to get to the bottom of it all. You know, obviously alluding to, I've got Blackmail right there, One Nation Under Blackmail, volumes 1 and 2 right next to me. And those are the Encyclopedia Britannica of Epstein. All right? Now, we did have email exchanges with Thiel and Epstein. Apparently, this is what the one of them was, reported by the Wall Street Journal. My Russian ambassador friend died. Life is short. Start with dessert. Now, again, I don't know what that means, but we also have the New York Times, and of course, the calendar that contained multiple meetings with Thiel. These are all things I've reported on in the past. Okay? So I would be remiss in not reporting them. Thumbs it up, subscribe, share, ring that bell, and really go check me out over on X, where at least, even though there is shadow banning going on there, and it's not monetized, just like really none of this. Rockfin's really the only thing that's really monetized. I guess Rumble is, but I pay just as much as I make. You know, if you can watch it there, but at least there's some kind of ability to grow 10 or 12 people a day over on X, where you just can't do that on YouTube anymore. So let's do it. Let's read this bad boy right here. A time for truth and reconciliation. It's deep state versus deep state, folks. Let's do it. All right? So he's got the Trumpski and Hutch with his wife on the top. All right? In 2016, Barack Obama told his staff that Donald Trump's election victory was not the apocalypse. By any definition, he was correct. But understood in the original sense of the Greek word apocalypse, meaning unveiling, Obama could not give the same reassurance in 2025. Trump's return to the White House augurs the apocalypse of the ancient regime's secrets. The new administration's revelations need not justify vengeance. Reconstruction can go hand in hand with reconciliation, but for reconciliation to take place, there first must be truth. Let me just stop right there. And all I'm going to say is this. Everyone knows I'm not a huge fan of the Barack star and people behind him, but Trump and him were laughing it up. Now, do I fault Trump for that? I'm not on the Trump train. At the same time, there are those that will tell you that it was, Obama giving the orders, and I'm not one of these people telling you, of things like the old assassination attempts on the guy's life. Again, I'm not saying that. Do I think he was integral in the ability to spy on the man as he was running for the presidency? Of course. Do I think there's a lot more out there that he was involved in perpetuating Russiagate and other hoaxes? Of course. All right? But this should tell everybody out there, no matter what I'm reading from Peter Thiel, what reconciliation is going to be, what Kash Patel has told you with the FBI, big players are not going to jail. The Biden family is not going to jail. Hillary Clinton is not going to jail. All right? We all need to grow up. Big time. And I mean big time. When it comes to things like that, that's reality. All right, let's go back. The apocalypse is the most peaceful means of resolving the old guard's war on the internet. A war on the internet won. My friend and colleague Eric Weinstein calls the pre-internet custodians of secrets the Distributed Idea Suppression Complex, DISC. The media organizations, bureaucracies, universities, and government-funded NGOs that traditionally delimited public conversation. In hindsight, the internet had already begun our liberation from the DISC prison upon the prison death of financier and child sex offender Jeffrey Epstein in 2019. Almost half Americans polled that year mistrusted the official story that he died by suicide, suggesting that DISC had lost total control of the narrative. Let me stop you there. No. Even when certain things start to get into the public arena, there are subsidiary plans, as Thiel knows. In other words, there's always plan A, B, C, D, E down the line to navigate these situations. And let me tell you right now, what the biggest navigation move has been with Epstein in particular. The idea that there's some kind of a magic list. That's not real. There's no list, everybody. There's no client list. There's video and photographs of associates of Epstein that were being blackmailed. All right? And yes, did he procure many of these girls, mostly himself, and then, push them along? For sure. But they are obfuscating so many other aspects of this case, much of it being the illegal arms dealing he was involved in. All right? Let's get back to Thiel. It may be too early to answer the internet's questions about the late Mr. Epstein, but one cannot say the same for the assassination of John F. Kennedy. 65% of Americans still doubt that Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone. Like an outlandishly postmodern detective story, we have waited 61 years for the denouement while the suspects, Castro, 1960s mafioso, the CIA, Allen Dulles, gradually die. The thousands of classified government files on Oswald may or may not be a red herrings, but opening them up for public inspection will give Americans some closure. And look, again, when we talk about this, I've been a huge advocate for mass declassification, not just stuff from 60 years ago. We got to go past that, actually, to World War II era and beyond, especially when we're talking about Operation Paperclip, all the way up through 9/11. Let's be grown-ups. But again, when we're talking about managing narratives, this guy is a master at it. Is a master. Let's continue on. Let's see. We cannot wait 6 decades, however, to end the lockdown on a free discussion about COVID-19. In subpoenaed emails with Anthony Fauci's senior advisor, David Morens, we learned that the NIH, the National Institute of Health, apparatus hid their correspondence from Freedom of Information Act scrutiny. Nothing, wrote Bercario, in this medieval plague epic, the Decameron, is so indecent that it cannot be said to another person if the proper words are used to convey it. In that spirit, Morens, the former chief U.S. medical advisor, Fauci will have the chance to share some indecent facts about our own recent plague. Did they suspect that COVID spawned from U.S. taxpayer-funded research or an adjacent Chinese military program? Why did we fund the work of EcoHealth Alliance, which sent researchers into remote Chinese caves to extract novel coronaviruses? Is gain-of-function research a byword for a bioweapons program? And how did our government stop the spread of such questions on social media? Well, again, if you go beyond all those NGOs and you get into things like signature reduction, no one is still talking about that. And obviously, I've made commentary on everything that was discussed in that paragraph years ago as it was going on, right? DARPA isn't mentioned right there. Why is that? Can you tell me? I can give you a hint, because these are the cliff note shifts. If anyone thinks Anthony Fauci's going to jail, too, I don't see it happening. That guy is in his late 80s. How much longer he's going to be around in the first place is another thing. He's already been kind of shuffled to the side. Same thing with like a guy like Klaus Nutzschwab, right? I just posted that great interview with Mark Gober. You can go check that out across platforms as well. And it's like, yeah, Klaus has written these books. Yeah, he's part of the World Economic Forum. But these ideas, this agenda pushes forward. And Thiel is a big part of the digital agenda, the surveillance state agenda. All right? It comes off libertarian, but in my mind is extremely authoritarian when we get into certain issues. Israel in particular, and we're going to show you that clip after we read this, where I've never seen Thiel actually look so uncomfortable when talking about, death being rained from above via AI and lavender in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Okay? So let's continue here. Our First Amendment frames the rules of engagement for domestic fights over free speech, but the global reach of the internet tempts its adversaries into a global war. Can we believe that a Brazilian judge banned X without American backing in a tragicomic perversion of the Monroe Doctrine? Were we complicit in Australia's recent legislation requiring age verification for social media users, the beginning of the end of internet anonymity? Did we muster up even 2 minutes of criticism of the UK, which has arrested hundreds of people a year for online speech triggering, among other things, annoyance, inconvenience, or needless anxiety? We may expect no better from Orwellian dictatorships in East Asia and Eurasia, but we must support a free internet in Oceania. And look, he's given you the 1984 references there. Do I disagree with anything said there? No, of course not. But I've always said this. Free speech is a very low bar. It's like the lowest bar. Even free speech does not ensure individual freedom. We've seen that time and time again. A great example of that would be Julian Assange, right? I mean, Assange, who just went through hell on earth, the last decade plus, hell on earth, sat there and said, I thought the First Amendment was pretty clear. I didn't realize that they will just massage the language, and if they can, change the laws to do whatever they can to come after yo ass. Okay? So, look, again, we need free speech. It's the baseline. It has been totally and completely obfuscated. There is no real free speech platform out there other than things like BitChute, right? I mean, I guess you could say Gab, because Gab is still out there, etc. But they're not able to gain traction because we are in a techno-fascistic technopoly. It's what we're currently in. Let's keep reading. Darker questions still emerge in these dusky final weeks of our interim. Venture capitalist Mark Andreessen recently suggested on the Joe Rogan podcast that the Biden administration debanked crypto entrepreneurs. How closely does our financial system resemble a social credit system? Were an IRS contractors' illegal leaks of Trump's tax records anomalous, or should Americans assume their right to financial privacy hinges on their politics? And can one speak of a right to privacy at all when Congress conserves Section 702 of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, FISA, under which the FBI conducts tens of thousands of warrantless searches of Americans' communications? Once again, obfuscating the real issues and narrative management right there. So, first of all, Andreessen, although he's telling you the truth about crypto entrepreneurs, etc., the bigger things that he has said recently are the fact that we have had physics, the science, right? Physics, large sections of it, classified through the Cold War. In other words, starting well before my lifetime. I'm 45. And then that they've already walled off who's going to be allowed to utilize AI. And I've documented this throughout really the relative push of consumer level AI right now. And especially the acceleration with the chief artificial intelligence officer program, the Bilderberg announcing a post-truth world less than a decade ago. I mean, there's so much, to dig into in that arena. And then, look, FISA, big problems. How about the fact we know since the 90s, all the telecommunication companies out there, I'm sure they're using different systems now, but we're utilizing NORAS Insight systems to take every communication digitally and funnel it right to the NSA. Hepting versus AT&T, Hepting versus AT&T, Hepting versus AT&T. Long before Snowden revealed you were being spied on all the time, we had that court case, and I put it in a prominent role in Invisible Empire, A New World Order Defined, which is free and in the links below. Let's continue reading right here. Okay? South Africa confronted its apartheid history with a formal commission, but answering the questions above with piecemeal declassifications would befit both Trump's chaotic style and our internet world, which processes and propagates short packets of information. The first Trump administration shied away from declassifications because it still believed in the right-wing deep state of an Oliver Stone movie. This belief has faded. Our ancient regime, like the aristocracy of pre-revolutionary France, thought the party would never end. 2016 shook their historical faith in the arc of the moral universe, but by 2020, they hoped to write Trump off as an aberration. In retrospect, 2020 was the aberration. The rearguard action of a struggling regime and its Struttelberg ruler. There will be no reactionary restoration of the pre-internet past. The future demands fresh and strange ideas. Let me just stop right there. Where's the acknowledgement of what actually happened in 2020 with the corruption and fraud and reality sauce? Where's the acknowledgement of the installation of a dementia patient prior? And that this current regime has been ruled by committee behind the scenes and like the least transparent thing ever. Let's finish this up. The future demands fresh and strange ideas. Again, there is no fresh and strange ideas to free speech, transparency, and accountability. And by the way, a checks and balances system. That's what this constitutional republic was based in. New ideas might have saved the old regime, which barely acknowledged, let alone answered, our deepest questions. The causes of the 50-year slowdown in scientific and technological progress in the U.S., the racket of crescending real estate prices, and the explosion of public debt. All right, so you're acknowledging the technological slowdown. You did not acknowledge the fact that we have classified and walled it off. You've not acknowledged the fact that by doing that and then picking these military-industrial complex winners and losers like you, Peter, like you create a system of perpetual debt for the serf class. You create a system of oppression, okay? And shadow banning their free speech if you don't outright take it away, of thought crimes outwardly. That's all a part of it. Let's finish it up, and then we're going to play this clip of Thiel on lavender. Boy, this one's a tough one. New ideas have saved the old regime, which barely acknowledged, let alone answered our deepest questions. The cause of the 50-year slowdown in scientific and technological progress in the U.S., the racket of crescending real estate prices, and the explosion of public debt. Perhaps an exceptional country could have continued to ignore such questions. But as Trump understood in 2016, America is not an exceptional country. It is no longer even a great one. Identity politics endlessly relitigates ancient history. The study of the recent history, to which the Trump administration is called, is more treacherous and more important. The apocalypse cannot resolve our fight over 1619, but it can resolve our fights over COVID-19. It will not adjudicate the sins of our first rulers, but the sins of those who govern us today. The internet will not allow us to forget those sins, but with the truth, it will not prevent us from forgiving. So, deep state versus deep state. And let me say this. The idea that we're not an exceptional nation, I think, is a false notion as well. Are we the most exceptional? Depends on what we're talking about at this point. Okay? I will say our military-industrial complex, top flippin' notch, and don't let them tell you anything different. But they've let that narrative creep in as well, with narratives about Chinese spy balloons that were Johnny nonsense, etc. All right, we're going to get to this video of Thiel being put on the spot about lavender AI. Please thumbs it up, subscribe, and share. Remember, we're doing these videos, throughout the week, totally independent, with your support. Here we go. Here is Thiel being put on the spot about AI death machines.
So, what do you think about the use of artificial intelligence?
And for some reason, I didn't hear it. Oh, you guys were hearing it. I'm sorry. My bad. My speaker was off. We're going to bring it back. See, there it is. There's me screwing it right up. Here we go.
So, what do you think about the use of artificial intelligence or lavender by the IDF in identifying Hamas targets? And secondly, do you agree with Elon Musk about that the population decline is a risk for humanity?
Look, I'm not. Without going into all the I'm not on top of all the details of what's going on in Israel because my bias is to defer to Israel. It's not for us to second guess everything, and I believe that broadly the IDF gets to decide what it wants to do, and that they're broadly in the right, and that's sort of the perspective I come back to. And if I fall into the trap of arguing you on every detailed point, I would actually be conceding the broader issue that the Middle East should be micromanaged from Cambridge, and I think that's just simply absurd.
I think that answer is simply absurd. You could see how uncomfortable he was. The fact of the matter is, as we move away from human accountability in warfare, it's going to be even more difficult to prosecute or expose war crimes, period. And anybody and everybody is a target. That's the true nature of what terrorism is, by the way. It's that civilian populations are the target. And you're legitimizing governments doing that. Like when pagers blow up at public events. Okay? So look, man. There's a lot of stuff in that op-ed that are just common sense, but it's all obfuscating the realities of the true narrative that we're living under in our current post-truth world, which that Bilderberg steering member, remember we got a new co-chair, the ex-head of NATO, Jens Stoltenberg, knows all about. He knows all about it, Jack. Folks, I cannot do it without you. I do want to say thank you so much to Wendy, Geneva, Big Hair Tsunami, Jim, who's been with me a long, long time, and Feeling Fine. Thank you guys so much for supporting the broadcast. Remember, $5, $10, $15. It does mean the world to me. Big donors, thank you so much. There are other links down below, but I would encourage you to watch all of my documentary films. If you're new to Peter Thiel or the Bilderberg Group, you only heard World Economic Forum, Great Reset, shade the motion picture, shade the motion picture. If you doubt me on surveillance of everyone in this country, please check out Invisible Empire, A New World Order Defined. All free of charge, all out for you guys, because the deal is this. What we were talking about today, it's not about left or right. It is always about right and wrong. I absolutely love you guys, and we'll see you on the flip side.